And we should be, if all goes well, we should be live. Welcome to Spiritual Warrior Conversations, and I'm really excited to have my guest today, Reverend Toni Heggi, who has been a teacher to me, a friend, and I'm really excited. I'm a little bit jealous that he is in warm, sunny California, and I'm in not so warm Calgary. So welcome, Toni.
Well, hi. Glad to be with you.
So let's just jump right in. We've got a few audio problem or video problems going on, but you can hear Toni, so that's all. That's what really matters. You can see my beautiful smiley face. So I don't know about you as the average listener, but I know about me that I wasn't born with my own knowledge and knowing of what spirituality was. In my case, my parents told me what God was, what religion was, and it was through my own discoveries that I discovered my version of spirituality. So, Toni, how did you come about this concept term of spirituality? When did you become aware of what spirituality was to you?
I'm not sure I actually went looking for spirituality. I started out more questioning. By the time I was 12, I was questioning my own religion quite seriously and looking at what we said versus how we lived and saying something's not in sync. And so I started looking for how do you live a life in sync? And that took me through a lot of different paths. I gotta say, there was no clear marked path that said, hey, this is the way. I dabbled in Christianity, the fundamentalist Christianity, which had lots of heart into it, it seemed, and I involved in some of the Eastern traditions looking for, because they seemed to offer a deeper spirituality. But what I discovered is that every path has its dead ends, its ups and downs, its difficulties, and its rewards. And I eventually left all of that in looking for my path, because I don't think there is a spiritual path. I think we each have a path to spirit, and that it's uniquely ours. The more I look back at it, I'd say this has been a journey of discovering me more than anything, finding out where it is that I truly stand and where I truly feel, knowing that I'm speaking into, or I'm thinking into, and I'm living into something that's very plastic and reflective, but it's greater than my current idea of self. I think about it back when I was in Calgary. I had a particular idea of self that had edges and ways of thinking about myself that, I'm no longer that person, because the ideas that I'm living with or I'm using to live through are different. And I think that's true of all of us, that we go through our lives evolving, changing who we are being. Our idea of self grows and becomes greater, and we have to find ourselves again in that new invention. And I think that's really the spiritual.
So my question, was it out of curiosity that you went searching, or what? Why were you looking? Was there something missing, or were you longing for some sort of answers?
I think it was more a sense of disharmony, that the world around me didn't fit together well, like what people said and what they did, and what I was told was so, and yet what was really happening, there was just a big disconnect. And so, more for personal peace more than anything, because until I started to interact in the world, I don't think I really felt the need to find harmony. I was pretty much, people tell me I was a very harmonious child. I was inside, and I was usually pretty much fine with whatever was going on. But somewhere between the age of 5 and 7 or 8, I became aware of this disconnect, and it seemed to almost be driven to try to understand it, to grow beyond it. I don't know. I didn't even have words for it in those days. I still think that by the time I have words for it, it's outdated and not really what's going on anymore. That the things I can understand are all past events, and the now are still the mystery, still what I'm trying to come to grips with. So, and I think maybe some of us are just kind of cursed with that internal itch that we can't scratch.
I love that.
Maybe it's just something to wake up to one day. But that's basically been my journey, is continual, like a big bear trying to find a stick big enough to rub up against to do me some good.
Oh. So can you just turn your sound down slightly? We're getting an echo.
I can try. Let me see if I can find out how I do that. Is that better?
Because it's when I talk. Okay, that's not so bad.
Okay, so I don't get an echo from you, so.
Okay. So, do you feel this itch, this need to scratch? Has it been sated, or are you still looking? You still searching?
It's continues to be there. I think the more I understand the world, the more I've come to grips with, that our idea of what's real is so illusory that I've become much more interested in how this virtual reality we live in, there's a virtual reality is the buzzword. Everybody wants to get into virtual reality, but that's what we live in. We live in a virtual reality, not an actual reality. Our lives are this play and it's happening between our ears that is the result of a bunch of inputs that may or may not reflect what's actually present. And more, you look at the American political situation right now, you realize we can't even agree on what's what. It's one thing to agree on disagree on what's what it means, but when you can't even agree on what's what, then you're really kind of lost. And it's become more evident that we live in worlds of our own construction, and that we no longer are sharing an agreement about what that shared reality is. So we become less and less able to communicate with each other. So I'm much more interested now. How do I find that place where I really can grasp what's real?
That's a beautiful.
Because what's real has to be something that I'm sensing that's not sensical. It's nonsense. It's not sensory based.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So someone that's just starting on the path, this is a loaded question. So someone that is just starting on their spiritual path, is there something that you could offer or would offer to just set them? We all know you've already said that they're on their own path, but what would you would like to offer for someone starting to help set them on a path? If anything, you can say no, but what would you offer to someone just starting?
Question everything. The things you think you know are the biggest barrier to seeing what's present. Everything we've been told, everything we think we figured out, it's all questionable. And that's the thing where most religion goes wrong, is instead of encouraging people to become conscious of their assumptions, we give them a set of assumptions they're supposed to accept whole hog and tell them not to question. But there's no opening for spirit to move in that. There's no possibility of transforming yourself into another awareness. You have to question everything because the things that you think you know are your biggest points of error. The things you know you don't know, you're open to.
Yes.
So that would question everything.
Thank you. I met Toni maybe 6 years ago when you were the chief, the pastor reverend at it was the West Side Center of Spiritual Living. Is it that many years ago? How many years have you lived in California now?
I've lived here just about 3.
So yeah, my timeline for once could be right, that it was probably 3 years that we attended service with you, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Probably
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
And yeah, Toni's opened me, like, as you can listen through our conversation, Toni is sharing equally his wisdom, but he's never once, and you will discover when you talk with Toni, that he'll leave you to your own devices and he'll open you up to questions and allow you to find your own answers, and he'll share you what his thoughts are. So that's one of the things that I truly loved about my experience of Toni, is that he'd open up a crazy question and then allow me to find my answers, and then we could openly discuss what I came with, and never the judgment of, Neil, you don't know the full meaning of it. So thank you for those lessons and blessings.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
But it's in fact we never know the true full meaning of something. We bring meaning to stuff. I think somehow there may actually be some meaning in the universe that's not subjective, but we are not privy to it most of the time. What we are privy to is, well, I had this thought earlier, and it was this notion we were going to talk about enlightenment. And what that suggested to me was lightning. You've ever been in a lightning storm? And when the flash of lightning occurs, you suddenly can see a whole vista in great detail for a second.
Yes, yes.
And it's dark again. And what we're left with in these moments of enlightenment is an inkling. We get a split second glimpse at the pattern before us, and then it's dark. And then we are left to our own ability to remember, to recall, and to make sense of how, given what we saw, how all that we still see can fit together. And when you start down this path, what happens is you start to have flashes of enlightening. Interesting when you even say it that way, it sounds like lightning. Yeah. But you have these flashes of insight that give you a sense of a pattern that you don't see clearly. And life becomes about trying to make sense of what you now have a clear sense of the pattern, but you can't see how it fits together yet. And so life becomes an adventure, and every day I sit down at my computer after I've meditated and I try to pull one little piece of it out so that, I'm clarifying one little piece of it for myself, and hopefully because I'm sharing it with my Facebook family, I'm sharing it with, more people who may have another view of it. And sometimes people reply back to me on what they've noticed out of what I said. And it opens a door for me again because it's in that feedback. And I think that's part of the thing. This spiritual journey is a quite individual path. And I think from my generation, we really had the sense that it was a very lonely path because you really have to find your own way. But I've come to appreciate the opportunity to share with people who are on their own lonely path. Because sometimes, while what they have seen doesn't necessarily relate directly to what I've seen, sometimes it illumines a pattern that I haven't quite grasped. And so, in a way, we're sharing each other's enlightenment and enlarging our own in that journey.
Thank you. So that just is a beautiful segue. So you say you write every day or most days on Facebook. Where is it that you post this on Facebook? So how would any of our listeners be able to get a hold of and see what you've shared for the day?
Well, you can go to Toni Heggi, Toni Heggi. You could click on there, search me out, friend me, and it'll show up on there. You can go to one of my pages, most likely Westside Center for Spiritual Living or the Science of Successful Living. Either one of those pages will have them on a daily basis.
Okay. Because really, as what Toni has said, that sometimes when we share something with people, it triggers, a conversation may trigger a spark or a growth within ourselves, but also when we put something out to the universe, we don't know the complete ripple of effect, positive or negative, of what we're sharing. Like, our ego wants it to be a positive experience, but sometimes we grow from the negative experience of life as well. So yeah, I highly encourage you to check out the Westside Center for Spiritual Living if you want it daily, or friend Toni Heggi, Toniheggge, and you'll see that handsome face that you can see on there, and you will see. And so where do you believe that you're headed in your evolution? We know that nothing's permanent and nothing will do, but where do you believe that you're headed towards for your next adventure in your own spiritual evolution? Where would you like to be?
Well, it seems to me where I'm headed is onto the internet. I find I have some reluctance to engage in church ministry again. I just recently finished a stint as an interim minister in a church, and I find church doesn't bring out the part of this journey in people that I'm interested in stimulating or being part of. A more direct conversation, I think, is more useful. We seem to be evolving away from church communities. And I really am having less and less time in my life to spend time talking to people who want to play on the surface of it and who aren't really interested in their own personal development. It's, I don't tell people this much. I'm 70 years old this next month, and I've spent just about as much time as I've got available in holding people's hands and telling them it's going to be okay. Because it's going to be what it's going to be based on how we choose to grow and develop it. The world's in a wonderful place right now. It's in a place of constant, absolute change. Nothing that is guaranteed. Nothing is going to stay the way it was. Everything is in flux. Great opportunity for people of high consciousness to take a stand and generate a new wave of possibility. And so I'm excited by that, and I want to be engaged in that conversation with people. The old forms are no longer as useful as they were. Politics is turning out not to be a very effective way of making change happen in the world. And the kind of political actions that people seemingly want to gravitate to don't seem to be as effective as maybe they seemed in the past. I think really where we're at is what's going to change the world is our decision to change ourselves, to actually live our principle, what we've discovered is true for us, and to not be so willing to put it aside because it might be not understood.
Yeah. I one of my personal coaches, when I said that I believed in the Shin Dao, Shin being the heart, Dao the way, and the translated to the way of the heart or the philosophy of the heart, one of my coaches challenged me to get out. And the easiest way to share something is just to get out of my comfort zone and almost evangelize and go and try to share it. One of the most spiritual conversations I had was with a homeless man, because my coach, I paid him huge dollars, and he told me, get out on the street and go and evangelize it. So I went downtown Calgary, and I was trying to share the spirit of the heart, love, and I had a spiritual conversation, and I learned so much about love from this homeless man who had nothing, but yet in his world had everything, because he was content and centered. It was a beautiful conversation, and I was awed to be in his presence.
Yeah, you got to give up your notion of where it lies, where the people who have something to contribute to your life are going to be. I have found many times that people who are supposedly in the position to be that person, they have the prestige, they have the position in life, they have the role, are often empty and not very nourishing. And yet I have wandered among the less fortunate in the world in several continents, and have found among everyday peoples a clarity and love and a certainty that is so lacking in the people who seem to think they know. So it's an interesting journey, and I certainly would not try to talk anybody out of taking this journey, but you really have to let go of your preconceived notions as to what it's going to look like and how it's going to go. I think it's John Kabat-Zinn wrote a book, and he said, everywhere you go, there you are.
Yes. And one of the reasons I call this spiritual warrior conversations, because it's just adding to what you said, because anyone that starts on their spiritual path and stays on the spiritual path has to have an intense amount of courage, an intense amount of fortitude, just because it continually asks more and more and more of the seeker. Because when you truly are looking for the answer, you just keep getting more and more and more questions. From my point of view, from my path, the more I know, the less I know.
Yeah, the more you know, you don't know, and it's a big part of the journey, And I like this notion of spiritual warriorship, because they call this a path of purification. And what we're purifying is not some way to become holier now. That's not the intent. It's about breaking apart your preconceived notions and fixed attitudes that really pollute your ability to be present in the moment. And along this journey, what you are doing is pulling them to the surface and breaking them, smashing them to smithereens, and leaving an emptiness where there what used to be something filling up the space. It's one of the things I really liked about the Eastern traditions was this focus on the emptiness, on letting the void be there, because it's in the void that things actually happen. It's not, it's not on the stage where everything's set. It's kind of in the big empty space where something can be. And I think this spiritual journey is really about finding your own path into the empty, that you'll be present to the possibility of what has yet been. We're so tied to our history and what's happened, and what that justifies, and how that means this or it means that. And yet all new paths have to come out of the emptiness.
Yes.
And it's embracing that and encouraging myself to sit in the emptiness and to let go of it. I'm constantly assailed by the notion I should be having goals and setting goals and getting things done. And I'm a real sucker for that way of thinking. But nothing real has ever come to me that way. It's always come out of the emptiness when I've been willing to sit and not know that something occurs and suddenly there's an opening. And it's my willingness to step into that when I don't know and I haven't got a plan. I don't have a plan B. I don't even have a plan A. I'm just stepping into it and trying to be consistent and concurrent and, with myself in that moment and be present to the people who show up there with me.
It's interesting how God, the universe, is spirit, provides us an opportunity when we need to slow down. We get colds, we break a bone, we get into car accidents, and it is those times when we really slow down and we turn the TV off and we sit in nature and just spend time in the emptiness, in the void, that our greatest teachings rise out of us.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it happens. I think it's probably pretty much the way it always happened. As I read great spiritual writers, not necessarily religious writers, although many of the religious writers were spiritual. And I read it from this perspective rather than looking for new answers. I find there's a lot of commonality in our journeys. That makes me think maybe there are some things that you could probably count on. And one of them is be surprised. And the other one is you usually have to give up your most prized notion about how life is. Your theory of everything has to break apart so that some new theory can arise.
Yes.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight, and I'm realizing my time is running short at this end, and I imagine our time on this program must be coming pretty close to the end.
It is.
I thank everybody for listening into the conversation, if you are, and to encourage you to, follow your path. Open up, listen. Be surprised.
So thank you, Toni, for being coming on our call, and thank you to our listeners, to our audience for participating. And I will put a link on this to the Westside Center of Spiritual, so you can get a hold of Toni if you want to hold additional conversations. And I highly encourage you to. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.